Well, it's great to be here. Great to be here, and great to see faces and people that I've met on other occasions. I want to just note I bring the greetings of my own congregation, St. Paul United Church of Christ, to you as a congregation, and may we both prosper in faithfulness in these days to come. In our gospel lesson for this morning, we hear two stories that Jesus told. One is about a shepherd's recovery of a lost sheep. The other is about a woman's discovery of a long-lost coin. If you really think about it, neither story makes good practical sense. After all, a shepherd leaving his whole flock behind to rescue a single lamb is jeopardizing the safety of all his other sheep. Likewise, the woman who invites the whole neighborhood in to celebrate the finding of a single lost coin is going to spend more money to entertain everybody than any of the money that she has recovered. Nevertheless, Jesus holds up these two stories to us as an example of how God feels about us and what he is prepared to do for the sake of our own salvation. If we have any doubt about the impractical nature of God's love for us, that the stories that Jesus shares in our morning gospel lesson, and that those stories are intended to underscore, all we have to do is look to the broader sweep of the entire Bible. At heart, from Old Testament to New, the Bible is an account of God's determination to save us from ourselves, even when we are at our most hapless and hopeless. Oh, there are times when God seems completely frustrated, his patience and fortitude sorely tried. Remember the day when God levels the immoral cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Yet, in a rather pointed dialogue beforehand with the patriarch Abraham, God makes clear that he would not even consider destroying these two cities if there could be found within their limits even a small minion of just men and women. Moreover, before God obliterates these cities, he makes sure that Abraham's just and faithful nephew Lot has an opportunity to escape along with the rest of his household. Likewise, in Noah's day, God seems prepared to completely wash his hands of all of us, sending a great destructive flood. Yet here, too, he preserves the lives of Noah and his family in a great ark, along with a teeming multitude of animal life. Furthermore, God also vows in that moment never to wreak such total destruction again, at least not before he is ready to usher in his final kingdom. Rather poetically, the Bible tells us that God sets a rainbow in the sky as a sign, a symbol of this great promise. And God, subsequently thereafter, lives out that great vow by sending prophet upon prophet, intended to help us redeem our lives so that we don't put ourselves at the brink of self-destruction. The role of the prophets is to renew and to proclaim anew the ways of love and justice that lend themselves to a faithfully and fruitfully ordered society. And when we ignore the prophets, God sends his own Son with the saving message we need to hear. Of course, wouldn't you know it? We even crucified Jesus. Yet God knows us so well by this time, if he didn't know us perfectly well from the start, that he makes Jesus' first coming foolproof. In sending his own Son, who is both mortal and divine, God has fixed things so that even though Jesus must die on the cross, neither his spirit nor message die. In fact, as we celebrate every Easter, God raises Jesus up from death itself, thereby validating in the deepest, profoundest way possible the enduring, eternal truth of Jesus' salvation message. Through the living ministry of the resurrected Christ and the work of the Holy Spirit, God continues to call upon us to repent of sin and selfishness and to embrace God's way of love and justice in all aspects of our lives. Yes, God's love is extravagant. And if you consider it rationally, God's love really is impractical. It's nothing that we deserve. But the persistence of God's love goes to show that when it comes to our fate and well-being, God is not a quitter. He doesn't believe in giving up on us. And in the magnanimity and generosity of his love and commitment for us, God sets a standard for all of us to follow. Over long centuries, many Christians have, in fact, followed God's faithful example. Our ancestors in faith have not been quitters, even when the odds were against them. When the odds against them seemed great and perseverance seemed impractical. Instead, and indeed, in the name of the loving, redeeming God who created them, they faced down lions, nursed lepers, made sacrifice upon sacrifice without constantly counting the cost. Through it all, they made their lives a blessing to others. And the sheer stamina of their love and courage has inspired many more. Both the demonstrated love of God and the legacy of our ancestors in faith who fully believed in God's stubborn love should be an inspiration for us today. Frankly, I think we need that double inspiration of God's steadfastness and that legacy of our ancestors in faith, those who've come before us. Never in my memory can I recall a time when I've encountered so many people dispirited, discouraged, and doubting. Skepticism, cynicism, despair reign huge in our lives today. At every turn, folks talk about how disgusted they are with politics, and no one seems to have a good word for any of our public institutions, including schools and churches. Almost all forms of authority are distrusted and disrespected. We really have become a nation of complainers. Now, criticism is not always a bad thing. Without critiquing ourselves and others, how are we ever going to be conscious of what we need to change and revise? But being hypercritical, where we are persistently focusing on what's wrong and what's amiss, can quickly become counterproductive, undermining any conscious effort to revise, correct, and improve. We can demoralize ourselves and others to the point that we all just give up. We expend so much time and energy on negative talk that we end up drained and don't have the emotional and spiritual resources to get anything positive done. We end up talking ourselves into a ditch. Sad to say, this is happening even with devout Christians. In the circles I travel, I can't count the number of people who talk about our times as end times. Of course, I know that Christ's coming, his second coming, can happen at any time. To whatever extent possible, we always need to be prepared. Yet every generation since Jesus' death has lived in expectation of his second coming. And you know what, congregation? You and me, we're still here. The past 2,000 years should teach us a lesson. As much as we need to be prepared for the second coming of Christ, we also need to be prepared to wait, and maybe for a long time. Ultimately, an obsession with end times may actually represent a faith deficit where we're ready to throw the towel in on our world before God is. Our human impatience and active desire to see the curtain come down on life as we know it may actually constitute a failure on our part to trust God's ability and demonstrated will to redeem a bad situation and renew us in the world in accordance with his purposes and plan. I, for one, believe in the incredible power of God to renew and redeem all things. And I hope you believe in that power too. I love the verse of the hymn we're about to sing after I finish my remarks today. It's a hymn called "This Is My Father's World," and I hope you'll really listen to it as we sing it because it offers its own sermon. I like the verse especially that says, "Our God has made this world. Oh, let us ne'er forget that though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet." These are precious words. They are precious words to me, and I hope to you. One of the unspoken rules of God's creation is that positive begets positive, just as negative begets negative. When we truly trust in God and his extravagant love, good things are more likely to happen. Counting on God's love, we need to be positive and to do our part to help good things happen for our lives and the lives of others. Right now in our mass media, we have two televangelists, Joyce Meyer and Joel Osteen, very popular right now. Whatever their renown, I don't think either of them can be called great biblical prophets. Nevertheless, in the face of so much negativity in our world at large, they are each being prophetic for our day, at least I think so, saying what needs to be said when they encourage us to have faith and to stay positive. Osteen's message is that positive is as positive does. In her own unique and inimitable way, Joyce Meyer says just about the same thing. In other words, as both Osteen and Meyer attest, we can just stew in our own negativity, or as a better alternative, think faithfully and act positively to set in motion a change of circumstances for our lives together. Just wishing won't get us anywhere good. Only positive-minded thinking, praying, and doing can and will. And as Joyce Meyer puts it, God can't help us drive a parked car. We have to put it into gear first. In our present time, we all need to be taking a personal inventory. Where is our heart, our mind, our soul? And where's our faith? Do we still believe in God's extravagant love as preached by Jesus? Do we truly trust in the power of God who raised Jesus from the grave to raise us from whatever mud that now swamps us now? Are we positive or negative people? To what extent are we, through our own distrustful and doubting outlook, adding to the misery index of life today? Just as saying yes to God and Jesus is a personal decision, being positive is a choice that is ours to make. Strengthened by our faith in God's love and the grace of Jesus Christ, we don't have to let circumstances dictate how we are going to think or feel. Regardless of what is going on all around us, we can ultimately control our own mood, our own attitude, our own outlook. Is our glass half empty or is it half full? The decision we make, the outlook we embrace, can make all the difference for us in this world. My parents, who raised 4 sons never to be quitters, many times over shared with us the story of the 2 salesmen who separately traveled to the same distant land, hoping to establish a beachhead for their company's product. You've probably heard this before, haven't you? But for me, it's still a story that rings true. Well, upon arrival, the first shoe salesman soon calls home, or wires home, saying, "Don't bother shipping any shoes out here. No one wears them." But the second salesman calls back excitedly, saying, "Triple that shipment you planned to send me. Everyone's barefoot. No one is wearing shoes." Where one guy sees only a dead end, another recognizes opportunity and has the confidence that he can make something out of it. If we're people of faith and really do trust that we have a gracious and loving God who doesn't want to leave us high and dry, we should have the confidence that God will make a path for us whatever mess we encounter, if we just hang in there and stay attentive to the opportunities that God makes possible. Not long ago, the social commentator Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book on the uses of adversity. Inspired by the biblical story of David and Goliath, he began to examine other situations where the little guy or gal prevails against all odds in battling a big foe or a big problem. What he found is that a deep faith and positive attitude matters. If we believe we can do something, there's a good chance we can, even if we start out as an underdog. In his research, Gladwell discovered that adversity can actually work to our advantage if we persevere. Gladwell notes, for instance, that while a high number of people in jail today suffer from dyslexia, which is a reading disability, there are a surprising number of dyslexics also populating America's businesses, and successful businesses at that. Indeed, some of our nation's most wildly successful entrepreneurs, like the broker Charles Schwab, Kinko's founder Paul Orfalea, and John Chambers, who launched a $100 billion Silicon Valley company, are all dyslexic. So are 35% of America's small business owners. Apparently, their early battles dealing with dyslexia encouraged them to tap other talents that gave them the skills to navigate future problems in life. They ended up ahead of the game and thinking outside the box. And they focused on what they could do rather than what they couldn't. It was good preparation for the rest of their lives. All this resonates with me because I had my own problems with learning disabilities as a kid, to my parents' considerable despair. In those days, things like that weren't diagnosed. Later, they were shocked that I did as well as I did in college, graduate school, after I learned to work around those deficits that I had, deficits that I brought to the classroom. As it turned out, my own learning problems made me more sympathetic to other people with problems, which is not a bad trait, especially if you're going into the ministry. Experience, informed by my own faith, has taught me that no door is ever slammed in our face through misfortune without another door waiting to be opened down the hall. God is that good. We just have to step back from that closed door, even if it's been slammed in our face, and start walking down the hallway, checking other doors to find out which are unlocked, ready for us to open. Congregation, we all need to have more faith in God, trusting in His goodness. And rather than wasting so much emotional energy complaining about everything, from the state of our nation to the way one of those baristas make our morning coffee, we need to get doing positively and constructively so that we contribute to the necessary solutions rather than just standing here as a part of the problem. Jesus assured us that faith can move mountains. May faith move us to be more hopeful, positive, and constructive people.